I would now like to call upon Mr. Pankaj Patel, President, FICCI and Chairman, and Managing Director, Cadila Healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pankaj Patel. Mr. Ajay Mittal, Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ajay Mittal. We can do a little better round of applause for representation from the government, ladies and gentlemen. Our very own Mr. Uday Shankar, Chairman, FICCI Media and Entertainment Committee, and Chairman and CEO, Star India. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Uday Shankar. His Excellency, Mr. Nadir Patel, High Commissioner for Canada to India. Morning, sir. Our very own and one of the most loved filmmakers in our country, Mr. Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, Chairman, FICCI Film Forum, Director and Founder, ROM. Another prolific personality, Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey, Joint Secretary, Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey. Last but in no way least, our very own Dr. A. Didar Singh, Secretary General, FICCI. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Didar Singh. Sir, this is the time of the morning I feel very relieved because now you're on stage and you know exactly what happens from here. Ladies and gentlemen, FICCI Frames 2017, our panel on board, our inaugural session on in full swing. Big round of applause and we hand it over to Sir.
Well, thank you all for being with us this morning. It's wonderful to have all the dignitaries, the speakers, and of course, all business represented out here. I think our good friend Viraf, who calls himself Giraffe, was just mentioning about this becoming an adult. Now, the real reason and the real fact of becoming an adult is that not only has FICCI Frames grown over 18 years, but so has the industry. And the important point there is that not only do you come back every year, but the fact that we actually have grown to become a much more mature market, a much more mature event that actually happens. And the great thing about this event is it's completely and purely business. So it's really good to see all the people who are in the actual media and entertainment industry, who come here every year, who talk to each other, who do their deals, and who actually make this thing actually happen to whatever it is today, a $25,000 billion industry is what is expected and is going to. This is fabulous. This is really, really very big. And with registering a 9% growth, even higher than what the country registers, we have seen this actually happen in the last few years. So as we get ourselves into this, we will now, of course, begin with lighting the lamp. We had a wonderful lady who was to join us. She will, I guess, come in as we do, but has she come? Wow, that's timing. That is timing. Oh. Yes, wonderful. So we can all go straight and light the lamp. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Thank you for being with us. And do come up on stage straight away, and we'll start with the lighting of the lamp. Please come. Thank you very much. We're proud to welcome Jacqueline with us here this morning. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. Let's all welcome her, and we can all now light the lamp. Thank you.
A very good morning. Mr. Ajay Mittal, Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India. His Excellency Mr. Nadir Patel, High Commissioner of Canada to India. His Excellency Mr. John Terry, Mayor of Toronto, Canada. Our own Mr. Uday Shankar, Chairman, FICCI Media and Entertainment Committee, and Chairman and CEO, Star India. Mr. Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, Chairman, FICCI Film Forum, and Director and Founder of ROMP Private Limited. Our special guest, Ms. Jacqueline Fernandez, Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Didar Singh, invited guests, speakers, and our colleagues and friends from Canada. Good morning and welcome to the 18th milestone of FICCI Frames, Asia's only platform which gives equal voice to all multifarious arms of Indian media and entertainment industry. A special welcome to our friends from Canada, our partner country for this year. As you all know, a few years ago, the Indian and Canadian government signed a crucial audiovisual cooperation treaty that helps producers from both the countries exchange technical, artistic, and marketing expertise. Art and culture is a catalyst of bilateral bonds, and we are delighted by the presence of the Canadian delegation this time. It has been 18 years since we started out, and what a journey it has been. Of landmark of policies reached, you just had audiovisual depicting that. Impending measures have been tabled. Challenges have been overcome. Market trends analyzed, and most importantly, relationship being built and strengthened. These relationships over the years have transformed the media and entertainment landscape of the country and placed India firmly on the world map. With the Indian entertainment industry breaking new ground, evolving and reinventing itself, FICCI Frame has been a steady and constant cheerleader, supporting the industry with advice, wisdom, caution, and cheering it with applause. In fact, FICCI Frame has been India's M&A most accurate barometer. The platform has reflected the industry's mood each year and measured success and failure through its deliberation and predicted what is to come. We have seen some landmark speeches by visionaries at this very podium. Frames has been the fulcrum close to 2 decades now. Ever since the film industry was granted industry status, and even now, when we have finished a century or more in cinema. The Indian media and entertainment industry has been the real melting pot of the global digital revolution. No other industry has been as affected and as effective in adapting the digital economy as the M&A industry is. Amongst all the sectors, it is media consumption which is the most dynamic force on digital platform. Consumer tastes have changed radically, and the concept of linear and traditional media is long gone. Young people watch everything online. Most of us get our news on the social media and so on and so forth. Even opinions are shared, liked, and shaped on Twitter or Facebook, and the world is as it exists no more. It's time for us to accept and work on a 360-degree transformation in our businesses. Even as I say, this is a question that looms large. How do we maximize this new media in terms of monetization, outreach, and utility? And for this, we need a clear-cut policy framework delineating IPR and content ownership laws, infrastructure development in telecom technologies with high-speed internet and access to far-flung reaches of the country. A user monitoring system which could graduate into a full-fledged rating currency. A transformation towards subscription on the part of the consumer. In fact, that is why the theme of this year FICCI Frame has been thoughtfully titled as Digital Divide or Dividend. Unless we can completely master this digital wave, we won't reap the real dividend. The need of the hour is to think ahead and find that perfect balance between the content, platform, and monetization. To make this happen, we need to have deliberations between industry, government, and international partners. This is exactly what we shall set out to do over the next few days. The foreign direct investment inflows in the information and broadcasting sector in the period April 2000 to March 2016 stood at almost $5 billion as per the data released by DIPP. Some of the forward-thinking global deals have been struck in the sector which give us hope for the future. Dance2 Aegis Network Limited, the UK-based media and digital marketing communication company, has acquired Perfect Relation Group. Kedzenia planned to expand its footprint in southern India by investing 100 crore rupees. Vice Media LLC, the US-based digital media and broadcasting company, has entered into joint venture agreement with Times Group to open a new bureau and production hub in Mumbai and launch digital, television, mobile, and branded content in India. Cinepolis, the Mexico-based multiplex chain, plans to add more screens by investing around in India. The global video streaming giant Netflix has entered India as high-speed internet connectivity is becoming rapidly available to us. Nearly 1/5 of the India's 1.3 billion population is now online. The most academic awardee Jungle Book spectacular graphics were created by a Technicolor in India. Reliance Entertainment and DreamWorks, along with the participants of media and the media and entertainment, one has formed a cutting-edge film, television, and digital content company called Amblin Partners. Scoop Whoop, an Indian digital media and content startup, is expanding its video production unit called Scoop Whoop Talkies, another evidence of current trend in consumption. Is the government in the know of full potential of these truly exciting sectors? M&A is the window of our digital future. And the sooner this is established by our policymakers and stakeholders, the Indian M&A promises the country to be the world what is the real challenge and real opportunity this industry provides. Our minister, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, has outlined the ministry's plan on introducing a national communication policy. He has stated that the government has allocated 100 crore rupees to revive the community radio stations across the country. This is indeed heartening. We need more of that to happen. The Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is working towards promoting ease of doing business, which will ensure less regulation and facilitate India to become media and entertainment powerhouse. A National Center for Excellence in Media is underway, which will provide much needed industry training. As you are aware, that Union Budget 16-17 proposed a basic custom duty exemption on newsprint and also on the wood chips. What we need is streamlining the sector. We are looking forward to GST and a ratification of taxation regime. We need to be more open for the film certification system and a well-researched policy framework on digital media. I am sure I have barely just touched upon the tip of the M&A iceberg. I leave the rest of the exhaustive discussion, brainstorming, and immense assembling of knowledge and ideas to the experts who have come together here to make the memories of yet another memorable FICCI Frames. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patel, for pointing out some of the trends that are already happening and listing us some of the activities that government has been supporting, which actually leads this happen. But to now give us a theme address, may I call upon Uday Shankarji. You're all aware he is the CEO of STAR, but more important for us, he's the one who actually drives the FICCI Media and Entertainment Committee. So thank you, Mr. Uday Shankar. Thank you for always supporting us to take it to this level. Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Your Excellency, Mayor of Toronto, Mr. John Tory, Mr. Nadir Patel, Honorable Secretary, Information and Broadcasting, Mr. Ajay Mittal, Joint Secretary, Department of Commerce, Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey, Mr. Pankaj Patel, Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, friend Didar Singh Ji, Ms. Jacqueline Fernandez, friends from the world of media and entertainment. Before I put in my two-bit in front of you, I think a loud round of applause is in order for the 18th year of FICCI Frames. And for the incredible team of Leena and her colleagues who made it possible year after year. In this country, we all know we often create great things, but for them to grow from strength to strength is not an easy one. And for that, the tribute must be paid to Leena and her team. Thank you, Leena. Keep up the good work, please. The theme, as Mr. Patel pointed out, is digital divide or a digital dividend. I'm sure we will all hear a lot from you in the next couple of days about it. But personally, I find predicting the future to be a tricky business, especially when it involves the adoption of new technology. Just a year ago, at this very venue, there was a lively discussion on digital adoption. Less than a year, we are past the tipping point in this country. The distance that India has traveled in adopting internet-based behavior is nothing short of remarkable. From buying goods and services to ordering in, we seem to have done it all forever in this country. India is now one of the largest markets for mobile applications, be it by volumes of downloads, consumption of video, or e-commerce, for which it seems to have already emerged as the next big frontier. On the other hand, the conversation last year was about how many more unicorn startups will we see in India. This year, it seems it is about how many lame horses will the sector will have digital giants like Netflix and Amazon Prime. The story of bottomless war chess may or may not be true, but it does give us a sense of the competition that they see from homegrown digital enterprises, not just the likes of Hotstar, but others including Voot, Ditto, and many more. If there is one thing we know for sure, it is that this year we will see a lot more lively activity on this front. The technology that some of us have introduced in this country is as good, if not better than the best in the world. Combined with the reset in cost and quality benchmarks led by the likes of Reliance Jio, this has driven the adoption by the Indian consumer at a breathtaking pace. But while we celebrate this rapid growth, for this group of creative business people, today I would like to point out a somewhat disturbing trend that I notice. Bear with me. A trend that in the long run is likely to undo a lot of gains that we have made in the last few decades. I'm concerned if the Indian creative mind is in a position to respond to the pace of technological change with an equally rapid evolution in its creativity. Conservative. Even a word like, forgive me for using it, Sali, has to be silenced in a film. The city names must be absolutely correct and contemporary. And of course, do not go anywhere near discussions of women's issues, let alone female 77 movies. This number was 47 in the previous year and only 23 in the year before. But can we lay all the blame on the censor board itself? In my view, the board generally reflects the collective and the dominant consensus of our society. And there are increasingly more bodies, mostly self-appointed, self-styled, who have taken upon themselves the task of censoring media content and maybe entire creativity. The refrain seems to be, I don't like the legend or the myth on which your story is based, so I will burn down your sets. I don't like a character, so I will not let you release your film. If you say you're going to do a show of busting fake godmen, I will take preemptive action. And what is becoming alarming now is that sometimes even the forums that you would seek redressal at are more inclined to bless the street side censorship than speak for the freedom of expression. Take, for instance, the example of our own movie, Jolly LLB 2. A few days before the release of the film, we were asked to screen it to a group of lawyers and medical professionals who were to decide whether the scenes were appropriate or whether they insulted any profession or institution. This was despite the fact that the movie had been certified for universal release by the censor board. And this is just one example. Let me give you a very recent example, in fact, from yesterday. A case of habeas corpus came up in one of the courts in India yesterday, where the father of a non-adult girl who had eloped with her lover went to court seeking seeking direction from the court to get the authorities to produce the girl. The girl was produced in the court, and she said that she eloped with her lover because this was on the basis of an idea that she got from watching a Tamil film. Guess what happens? The entire regional censor board has been asked to present themselves before the court. Because the moot point is not to examine the claim of the woman, but the moot point is to see why did the censor board give an approval to that film, which encourages young girls to elope and fall in love. Thank God, no one has yet gone and blamed the Duryodhans and Ravans of the world on the film industry. There is yet, as Mr. Singh just pointed out, who knows? We might be responsible for the Mahabharat war. There is a long list of instances where the creative community has been bullied into changing its output to suit the needs of someone or the other in India. It seems that there are always people lurking in the shadows. Their sole job is to stretch and explore every piece of content that could be potentially offensive to someone. The openness of the internet was supposed to lead to greater plurality of opinions. Instead, it has created a violent polarity, a forced extremism on every matter that has made gray the least acceptable color in all discourse. As a society, we have raised the stakes of every argument to narrowly legal and brutally physical consequences. There seems to be no room left to have civil debates and no place for those who disagree. Punishment for disagreement seems to have become the norm. The institutions tasked with protecting expression and plurality seem to be at loggerheads with the objective itself. By creating elaborate formal ceremonies around it, are we taking the joy out of one of the most loved and celebrated lyrics in our country? That is our national anthem. What's frightening is that the court order has just become yet another weapon in the hands of any goon who's keen to stamp his authority in any theater in the country. We are rapidly descending into a mindset where the most critical objective of a work of art is to make sure that it offends nobody, no matter how many thematic or creative compromises it has to make. This is the most worrying part, friends, that creative minds have begun to self-censor their thoughts in anticipation and have started killing ideas before they germinate so as to avoid any potential trouble. And that is truly frightening. The spirit of creativity is to push the boundaries, and that seems to be deserting us. The advocates of vandalism claim that unique measures must be taken to protect our unique culture. Let me tell you, there is nothing unique about these methods. We seem to be following the script that other parts of the world, including Hollywood, had written almost 100 years ago. In the early part of the 20th century, the Hollywood film industry decided to regulate itself through self-regulation. It adopted a production code and insisted on its enforcement for almost 25 years. The code covered the use of profanities like hell and damn, any suggestive nudity, willful offense of any nation, race or creed, or any ridicule of the clergy, among other things. Doesn't it sound familiar? The similarity with our own moral code is striking, to say the least. Interestingly, television that was just arriving in American homes then emerged as the challenger to this regime. Along with European cinema that came into the US, television buried this regressive moral code. The question today is, will digital play the same role for our generation and our country? The role of a progressive challenger, the role of providing a bigger canvas and creating a space for dissenting point of view. This new medium has the ability to truly democratize broadcasting and content creation. It offers the creative community the rare opportunity to rethink from the scratch their art and how it is communicated. Only when modern technology and contemporary creativity truly come together will we create a compelling and powerful media and entertainment offering that we can call the digital dividend. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Uday. In fact, I must share something with you. Just yesterday, Uday was telling me, he said, how do I come every year to FICCI Frames and say something different? Well, obviously you can. It's quite remarkable. He's raised a very, very important issue, and I'm glad that you took it into the whole digital divide and digital dividend context of what this year's frame is, because that really is what determines it. It can be a divide and a dividend at the same time. And it's up to the industry, and this is where business and the industry comes in. We are the ones that have to stand with this and make sure that it is a dividend, and really the 2,000 plus crore, billion dollars worth of industry that we have to protect it and make sure that it does well and carries on. This particular year we have also, I guess it's very symbolic and links with what you were just talking about taking a stand, and a sort of a stand not just in domestic markets, but at a global level. And we are really proud to have Canada as our partner country that year, because Canada is one country that has always stood up for this. Thank you very much. And to introduce our guest, may I request the Honorable Excellency High Commissioner of Canada to come up on stage and introduce our guest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Singh, and President Patel and Chairman. That was a really, really great themed address, one that resonates with many of us here this evening, and distinguished guests on the dais. Let me just begin by, first of all, extending extremely warm greetings on behalf of the Government of Canada here at FICCI Frames 2017. It truly is a privilege to be the partner country for this exceptional event, and it's something that we've been looking forward to for some time. In fact, it's a little bit of vision turning into reality. One of the first visits I had when I became High Commissioner just under 2 years ago was from the FICCI Frames delegation in my offices in Delhi, and we talked about how great it would be for Canada to be a partner country, and to see that turn into reality is truly, truly special. So thank you so much for making this come together. We certainly we see a lot of reason and a lot of value in having Canada as a partner country. We see a lot of relevance in the industry. But I don't think there's a better time than for Canada to play a leadership role around the world in various industries, and this being one of them, than today. And for us to be here as partner country, but also with a delegation of nearly 100 strong, provides an opportunity for us to really take the themes, take the discussions that you'll have over the next couple of days, and really see how they can lead to tangible success that builds on the momentum that's already created. Canada has a long-standing history with FICCI and with FICCI Frames, and for this reason, we couldn't think of a better partner or a better organization to showcase some of Canada's messaging. And so when we think a little bit about why Canada would be a partner country for FICCI Frames, we ask ourselves, what is it that we want to do? What is it that we want to see happen? And part of that, of course, is industry-to-industry collaboration. It's to ensure that there's opportunities for Canadian companies, Canadian professionals, many of whom are here today from Canada, to work with Indian industry professionals. But a very significant part of our intention or objective is to tell a story, is to really talk a little bit about what Canada is doing with respect to film and television, what Canada is doing with respect to Canada-India, what Canada is doing today in the context of the overall bilateral relationship. And I'm not so sure we're telling the story loudly and proudly enough. So let me just share with you a couple of bits. First of all, the Canada-India relationship is strong. I would argue is at its strongest point and is booming. It's getting much, much stronger by the day, thanks to the work that everyone here and so many others in Canada and India are doing. Over the last 2 years or so, two-way trade is up 30%. Investment is up both ways dramatically. From Canada to India, we've seen almost $15 billion of new investment into India across a spectrum of industries. The people-to-people linkages continue to grow at a rapid pace. When we see visitors to Canada, we saw a 40% increase year over year last year. Students from India to Canada went up 70%. This year, all of those metrics not only are continuing to exceed, but they're quite dramatically different. On those that are visiting and studying, we're almost doubled where we were this year, last year this time already. And we see more momentum on that relationship continuing. We see tourism up double digits. We see new flights nonstop between Canada and India, and this is where I make a plug. Not only Toronto, Delhi, Vancouver, Delhi, but Toronto, Mumbai will be starting in July by Air Canada nonstop, which will help this industry as well. And there's a lot more happening on that relationship, and it's time for us to tell that story. For those that know Canada or have been to Canada or are working with Canada, we want to support you. We want to see your success grow even stronger. But for those that haven't been to Canada, for those that don't know Canada, it's our job to really bring the Canada story to you in a much more ambitious and aggressive manner. And that's what an opportunity like FICCI Frames provides us. It allows us to showcase a little bit about what we're doing. So if you take this industry in particular, Canada is at the forefront around the world of its capacity, its ecosystem of talent in the film and television industry, whether it's production, whether it's engineering, the full range of services. The ecosystem is long-standing. It was developed partly as a significant linkage to Hollywood and continues to grow at a rapid pace. If you look at the industry in terms of film and television, last year alone, it was approximately $7 billion worth of economic output. About 150,000 jobs in Canada are related to this industry. If you look at foreign language services productions, went up 27% last year alone. And if I look at all these metrics, they continue to move in the right direction. We have a lot of linkages already with India in terms of an audiovisual co-production agreement, which President Patel talked about. We have the Toronto International Film Festival, which is world-leading and one of the most attended in the world and has strong links here in India as well. And those are just a few examples, and we'll hear a little bit more about those shortly and over the course of the next 3 days. But don't take it from me. Yes, it's my job as High Commissioner and as a diplomat to showcase the virtues of what Canada and India can do together. But more importantly, take it from the industry. Take it from those that are already based in India and that are doing things in Canada or with Canadian companies. Or take it, more importantly, from the nearly 100 strong delegates that we have from Canada that are going to be here over the next couple of days. Take it from the Canada Pavilion. Please visit that. Take it from the different seminars and sessions over the next couple of days where industry practitioners can talk about the wonderful opportunities for growth. And that leads me to my concluding and most important part of my remarks, and that's to talk a little bit about our next speaker, who represents the city of Toronto, the largest city in Canada and one of the most important economic regions in all of North America. The City of Toronto is dynamic. It plays a very significant role in Canada-India relations. And if you haven't been to Toronto, you must visit Toronto. If you haven't been to Toronto recently, you have to get there, because what's happening under this mayor's leadership is quite groundbreaking. And the city is different. As each year goes by, you'll see something new and something dynamic and something different. And so it takes a very strong leader to really affect change and continue to promote the opportunities in Canada's largest city. It also takes a strong leader to officially lead our delegation to FICCI Frames 2017, and we're very, very delighted that he's doing that. And it takes a strong leader with vision to really showcase the opportunities for growth in the film and television industry, at which Toronto is at the heartland in terms of opportunities in Canada. And with that being said, he is a businessman, a lawyer, a former politician in the provincial legislature in Ontario, where he was not only a member of Legislative Assembly, but also the leader of the official opposition. And more importantly, what he's doing for the City of Toronto is very, very significant. And I said, I'm proud to say to everyone here, if it's good for Toronto, it's good for Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming His Worship, Mayor of the City of Toronto, John Tory. Thank you very much.
Well, High Commissioner, distinguished gentlemen, and Ms. Fernandez on the stage, and ladies and gentlemen, one and all. First of all, High Commissioner, thank you for those very kind remarks. When you're the mayor of the biggest city, and I'm sure it goes on here in India and all the other countries represented here, the biggest city in the country, it's hard to find people to say nice things about the city. Everybody always is a little bit jealous or otherwise inclined, but the High Commissioner, I thank him for his remarks, and I thank the Indian federal government, the state government dignitaries, and all of those associated with FICCI and FICCI Frames for welcoming us here as partners. I'm a proud Canadian, but I'm also the mayor of the country's biggest city, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about the relationship that I think is so important between this conference and the industry represented here and our city and the very important industry that we have. And it's not just about an industry. The High Commissioner mentioned the number of jobs that depend on the creative industries, television, film, digital productions, and that's important to us as well. But it's about an industry that captures and it helps to express the soul of a community. And certainly I can tell you that our industry in Canada, complete as it is with solid representation from people in the Indo-Canadian community, which is very large and very dynamic, and so it's such a blessing for us to have. More than 1 million Indo-Canadians living in Canada, and the majority of those living in the Greater Toronto Area. And one of the first things that I did as the mayor was to sign with Ashish Kulkarni and the Consul General of India in Canada, in Toronto, an agreement, that memorandum of understanding that was meant to forge new relationships between our creative communities, between the two countries, falling underneath the co-production agreement signed between our two countries. And it was meant to make sure that we had access to each other's sets of skills and each other's ideas and each other's innovations. And it has been followed up now by the fact that we are present here in such large numbers. We've mentioned this morning the delegation of 100 from Canada. I can tell you 40 of those are from the City of Toronto, and I'm pleased to tell you they include not just me as the mayor, but 2 members of our Toronto City Council, Councillor Michael Thompson, who's the head of economic development, and Councillor Nathan Chan, just recently elected to the City Council in Toronto. And what we want to do together is to find common ground in content creation. We want to seek best practices, support technology and innovation, and share this with each other, because we know that India is the largest producer of films in the world, and we want to make sure that we take that and take what we have in Toronto that I'm going to describe very briefly to you and put them together into something that is unsurpassed. More Collywood, we need more Mollywood, we need more Sandalwoods, and we want them all in what is the most diverse city in the world. You may have seen recently when the Mayor of London, and it was a wonderful thing for the world that he was elected, Mayor Khan, in the City of London by the people there, and he declared himself to be the mayor of the most diverse city in the world, and the BBC, as only they could, went off to check that out. And they came back and had said, no, he was sadly mistaken, that the most diverse city in the world was Toronto. And we're proud of that. Our city's been built. Our city has been built by people, including those from South Asia, who have come in such large numbers. 51% of the people who live in the city of Toronto were born outside of the country. Now, this is something that is unprecedented, and it is something where our way of life is on display every day, where we embrace people because they're different. And we embrace people because they come from somewhere else and bring new ideas and new approaches and new beliefs with them to our city. And frankly, we want to have it all. We want to have that, and we want to have that combined with more activity on the part of this industry in our great city. And I can tell you that we bring to the party, as it were, a great, experienced, energized talent pool of people that are familiar with television production, digital production, visual effects, every aspect of the industry that are represented here. We bring partnerships, including our unions, for example, who are represented here with us on this mission, part of our delegation as evidence of how we work together as partners. Now, some would say that all that means it's not about the money. I've learned it's always about the money in some respects. I came from the media and entertainment business, and I know that it is about making money, among other things. And I just want you to know that to the extent as well that we have very generous financial incentives provided by the Ontario and federal governments, making us one of the most competitive production jurisdictions in the entire world, what we want to do is we want to work with you to plan ahead so you can take advantage of those financial incentives that are available, because they can't just be received at the drop of a hat, but they can, with a little bit of careful planning, be made available to you to make it even more attractive for you to come and do business with us in Toronto. And we offer secure financial institutions, government supports, ease of navigating, and we've seen everything from a television series of all kinds, digital productions, gaming products, and the feature films, of course, produced very successfully in Toronto. So I look here today, and we're here to say that we want to have a partnership between Toronto and India. It's a partnership of enterprise and creativity and talent and experience, and yes, money, so that we can produce content of all kinds, but in particular produce Indian content of all the kinds that I made reference to, Indian content for the world, because you want to find more and more ways to showcase unparalleled commitment as well to customer service. So when you come to Toronto, you'll have not only all of the talent and all of the financial incentives, but you will have us in your corner saying we are going to make it easy for you to produce whatever it is you've come to produce in terms of film and other creative industries. So I am looking forward to a new slate of projects that will come and be with us as partners in the City of Toronto, opening a new chapter in the great history of this industry, which has such a fantastic global reputation, but also a great new chapter in our history of an industry that is growing in importance, billions of dollars taking place of production in the City of Toronto, and we're looking forward to having all kinds of screen-based and other digital entertainment working with you in partnership. I hope, as High Commissioner Patel said, if you haven't been to Toronto, you will come and visit. If you come and visit, please come and see me and the other councillors. We will make sure that you're shown a good time, and we will make sure that you understand what a great place it is to produce creative content and how much we're looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Tory, and thank you for us today. And I'm sure that all of you will do business and actual collaboration with us as this happens. Now, as part of our activity, and you heard this mentioned a little earlier also, we always do a report with KPMG. That's really the benchmark for the industry. So may I request the dignitaries to now kindly release the report, and may I also request KPMG representative here to join us on the dais while this is done. The report, please. Thank you very much, and we have a wonderful Jacqueline who has to now get on to the next inauguration that you're doing. You're welcome to leave, madam, while we carry on. May I now request Sudhanshu Ji to kindly give us a perspective from the Ministry of Commerce. We are honored to have him with us, and may I just announce that next year he's going to really be supporting us for even expanding FICCI Frames to the next level. He'll tell you about it. Please, sir.
Respected Secretary, Ministry of Information Broadcasting, Excellencies on the dais, President of FICCI, and all other dignitaries on the dais. I think I would be very brief and focusing on what is my job, which is what is the commercial and economic dimension of the films and where do we stand. And also a little bit about what is the global regime today around this sector. That is what is extremely important for people to understand. The World Trade Organization, how does it happen? It happens on non-binding basis through commercial and revenue sharing model. Now, what India has been pushing very aggressively, that when the world looks at Indian market for a variety of things, then the Indian industry should also get access to their market when it comes to audiovisual services, where we have the proven track record, we have created tremendous soft power around the world, we have a history and culture, and in terms of the global share, we are quite small. Our total film industry's global revenues are less than about 7% of our total revenues. Now this must change, because for any industry, the domestic dimension is important. But in today's integrated world, if the industry were to treat the entire global community as one market, then your share in that market has to be big in order to bring in the latest technology, funding, to plow back into the industry so that you can take it to the next level. We are today a little over a 2 billion of about, say, 38 billion film revenue. And by 2020, expected about 50 billion, we will be just about 3.7 billion. But when it comes to number of films, then we are the leaders. So where is the mismatch? There are a number of factors where I won't go. But the very minimum point, there was a reference given by Mr. Uday Shankar about the e-commerce. Now it's my job actually to point out that where do we stand in e-commerce? Because film industry is also a part of that emerging e-commerce market. In 2016, the e-commerce market globally is estimated to be about 1.1 trillion US dollars. The China is at number 1 with 376 billion US dollars. United States of America is at number 2, 322 billion US dollars. So this makes up about $700 billion already of the 1.1 trillion market. The Indian e-commerce market is at number 8 at 16 billion US dollars. The point I'm trying to make is there's a long journey to be made, and we have to start this journey somewhere. We have shown our standing in the domestic market. We have also created a footprint globally, and we have to build now on that footprint to generate revenues. just 3 years ago, when we participated in the Chinese International Festival on Services, they called CIFTIS. They started a special event which focuses around the service sector industry. And at that time, they had just about 14,000 digital screens in China. Today, there are over 40,000 digital screens in just about 3 years' time. We are way, way behind with just about 2,000 digital screens. Now, the point I am trying to make is that your global standing would enhance only when domestically you become strong. And how do you domestically become strong? Because today, it is not merely the content which is going to drive the growth of the film industry, but it is basically the technology and the medium, which is the digital medium, which is going to be at the forefront in driving the growth of this industry. So what do we do to at least add 20,000 screens, digital screens in India, to create that mass which then becomes globally competitive in creating films for different markets, for different economies, different geographies, different languages. Just last month, we were having a conference with our ambassadors in Russian region and the CIS region. And all of them, they said that till a couple of years ago, Indian films were extremely popular in the entire region. But now, since neither the subtitling is happening nor dubbing is happening for a variety of reasons, there could be problem of the distribution, there could be problem of the revenue sharing. They said virtually the market has been eliminated. Then we discussed this with the Ministry of External Affairs, and we talked to a couple of people, producers. We said the ministry would be very happy actually to again work with the film industry on the subtitling and dubbing, provided the producers and distributors, they come forward, because in the area where the film industry had a very dominant presence, from there, now domestically we have grown, but we have left many regions of the world and we have come out of that. The piracy is also one of the factors which has actually led to a degrowth of the film industry in several reasons, because a lot of website hosted, especially in the foreign countries, they offer these films. And in fact, we took this with China very strongly, because we found that on the same day of release, a number of Indian films, they are available on Chinese website, and they are viewed and watched quite extensively. Whereas formally the release of the film and the distribution of films is not happening. So I think this is perhaps could become one of the priorities, that how do we domestically add digital screens in India, and how do we negotiate with different countries. Say China's commitment, which is now the largest in terms of the digital screen globally, is for India just 20 films. Now, as per the WTO obligation, whereas there is no restriction if voluntarily they can take more films. Some of the Indian films got a huge, big release in that market also in last about 3-4 years. And we thought that it is the film industry, because any distributor there would be interested in revenue sharing model. And for that, there is no government restriction as such. Any number of films can be imported. The Korean films in Chinese market were literally non-existent. But today, after the Hollywood and the domestic films, Korea is the largest film industry in the Chinese market. And this has happened just in about last 10 years or so. The point, limited point I am trying to make from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, that since we have already have a credibility and a strong global footprint as well as the domestic presence, how do we make this, convert this opportunity into global revenue opportunity from the rest of the world market? Now this is something which we have to ponder. We have a couple of sessions around this, and how do we reach there with the interministerial and the industry cooperation. I think that is one point which is important from our viewpoint. The second is, two important initiatives were launched by government. One, Make in India, where this sector features very prominently, and second, Digital India, where again this industry can contribute immensely. Now, how do we combine Make in India and Digital India to take this sector to the next level? Now, this is another opportunity for us. The government has created the framework, government has launched number of programs, the FIPB liberalization has also happened. Let me just give you an idea that no country in the world has liberalized as aggressively as India in last 2 years. Our liberalization is unprecedented, and this, when we talk to negotiators, currently the RCEP negotiations are going on, then we find that even some of the developed countries there have more restrictions than what India has today. So we are more open, and therefore we would request the global community to come and invest in this sector, because opportunity are immense. Third and last point, which again I think is extremely important. The service sector today in India actually generates surplus. On the merchandise side, if the India has to grow, because India's energy requirements are huge, and we have about last year export of about 262 billion US dollars, but on the goods side we are deficit, and this deficit in last about 10 years has ranged somewhere around 75 to 80 billion US dollars. Now, how do we offset this deficit? Because if the currency's requirement is to be met, then somewhere the surplus has to be generated. But that surplus is coming from the service industry. Service industry exports about 156 billion US dollars every year, and imports are just about 76 billion US dollars, and we generate a surplus of over 75 billion US dollars every year. That nearly fully compensates for the merchandise deficits on the goods side. But the important point that I am trying to make, what is the contribution of the audiovisual services in that? Now, and the film industry in particular, of this 156 billion US dollars, contribution of the audiovisual services on export side is just about 140 million US dollars. So, which is very, very small. And there is an opportunity for us, therefore, in a big way, to actually take it to a different level altogether. Ministry of INB, Secretary is here, he will be giving you those details, has taken a number of initiatives, and we as commerce industry try to work very closely with all service sector industry and the ministries. And the film shooting is one area where India offers immense opportunities to producers around the world, and we can be a fabulous destination. Already a number of state government along with the central government have started offering a lot of incentives, a lot of facilitation, which has started showing results. But as I said, it's a complete mindset change which is required in order to remove a number of barriers which even exist today, and for which all of us are working very, very consistently, and I am sure in coming years we should be able to break some of those barriers and take this industry to a completely different level. As Secretary General FICCI mentioned, we want this sector to contribute much more in terms of generation of global revenues. And therefore, next year we have offered FICCI that we will be supporting this event from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry also to bring the global producers, global filmmakers, distributors, so that we can create a special platform where the international business on all fronts, whether it is content or technology or distribution or production, could happen. So with these words, I would like to thank FICCI Frames organizers who have done tremendous work in creating this event. Incidentally, I participated in the first event, FICCI Frames. I participated in between, and today when FICCI Frames is 18 years and is going to start its journey towards globalization much more aggressively, fortunately I am here again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the endorsement to FICCI Frames. And now for the main inaugural address, may I request Secretary of Information and Broadcasting, Shri Mittal is here with us. We're very proud to have him. Thank
His Excellency Patel, Excellency Tori, Pankaj Patel ji, Uday Shankar ji, distinguished guests on the dais, doyens of the media and entertainment industry, representatives from the government of Maharashtra and the central government, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank FICCI Frames, the organizers, all of them who gave me this opportunity to join here today and to learn from all of you present. I would especially like to thank Uday Shankar ji and Leena, who kept persuading me till yesterday to be able to come. And I must say, when the parliament is in session, it's usually difficult to come, but I think it was that pull factor, that word, and no lesser means, literally helped by Yashish Kulkarni. He's sitting here. You can't really resist somebody like Ashish. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. The criticality of India's media and entertainment sector can hardly be overstated, both in its contribution to the creation of incomes and jobs, and also in its role as one of the great pillars of strength of the world's largest democracy, which has a history and tradition going back to thousands of years. The industry contributes significantly to India's soft power at the global stage and is perhaps the strongest cultural ambassador of India to the world. Uday Shankar ji mentioned about the three aspects of media and entertainment industry: the content generation, distribution, and monetizing. It's a tribute to the creative talent of India. And all of you, quite a few of whom are present here, that content is, and content does not remain a very big issue anymore. Rakesh ji is sitting here, and so are quite a few others. I wouldn't even know them all. Content is not an issue anymore. Steeped in our own tradition and in our history and culture and traditions and the great diversity of the country that India is. Our creative people are capable of creating, as they have proved, world-class content in abundant measure. And where we really need to move now is the distribution and finally monetizing. Because as His Excellency said, well, it's all about money at the end. It's all about money. The lesson, personally, for me, is that these are and these should be the focus areas. How do we provide a platform and how do we work with the industry to create and strengthen the platforms that are available so that our creative geniuses, and as I said, they are no less in numbers in this big country, how do we support them? And then, of course, monetizing. And I think here, my ministry, and Sudhanshu is here, the Commerce Ministry, we have a huge challenge before us. I assure all of you present that we will work with increased resolve to ensure that we start doing this as early as possible. The industry has grown at almost twice the rate of our GDP and is one of the few that touches and impacts almost the entire population of our country on a daily basis. Backed by rising consumer demand, improving incomes, having met the basic needs, the Indian population is surely now exhibiting its great appetite for your product. The sector is seeing many challenges and many changes with the advent of new technologies and the new platforms. Both traditional and new mediums, business models are flourishing side by side. Well, from my own experience, when TV came, and especially when the TV in India went beyond Doordarshan with the entry of large number of private players, many of us had written probably the obituary of the print medium. But no, the media and the media persons continue to surprise us. We have a situation where print media is growing along with the audiovisual media. When the digital media started getting in, we again tried to write another obituary, this time not only for print, also for television. No, again, we are in for a big surprise. All of them are growing because the huge...
Thank you, and some final words. Thank you very much. He is chair of our film forum. Please, let's welcome him.
Dear friends, good to see you year after year and in strong numbers. And this only goes to reassure all of us that we are on the right path with the FICCI movement. Once again, we have a load of subjects, ideas, challenges in front of us, and I'm sure next 3 days will be absolutely great fun, and a lot of thoughts will get exchanged, and we shall all act upon them. A lot has been said about the censor and censorship in this country today. I'm very happy that Mr. Murthy is in the room, and between him and me, we were part of the Bengal committee, and we gave it 5 months. And if to break the suspense, what we've recommended is we need to abolish censorship. In complete clarity, there are no ifs and buts. There cannot be a scissor anymore in this great country if we need to preserve the freedom of expression. So the recommendation is to introduce certification based on age, but no censorship whatsoever. A very sincere thank to all of you for having graced this occasion and supported FICCI Frames. Without you, it does not happen. I think the men on the podium are just a mere reflection of the collective consciousness of the room, and that's where the podium draws its strength from. Thank you very much for coming back again and again in such healthy numbers and energy. Whenever I walk into this room, what really gets to me is the energy. India right now is a land of dreams. We have the great Indian dream, a land of opportunities, and there's so much to be accomplished, and we're going to do that. But we really cannot do that with meaningful partnership. So, sir, thank you very much from coming over from a faraway land, but you're very close to our hearts. Thank you very much for each delegation member from Canada. 3 cheers. For being here. I hope you have a great time. I hope you come back again and again. We have a saying called Atati Devo Bhava, which actually I was trying to understand the meaning. It means come back. My dear friend, my guest, do come back. So, yes, we need to make money, I totally agree. But I beg to differ at what cost. We need to create content. Yes, we will create content. We will be imaginative. We will preserve our tradition. We will look into the future. But I think where we are failing is we are failing the nation is to take the content to the people of the country. So unless, sir, we start a revolution and the beginning of people's theaters in this country, all that we create will have very little meaning. Today at the breakfast with you, I actually heard myself saying that piracy is good. And I said, oh, what have I said? Where did this come from? That there should be piracy. And why did I say that? I was a bit angry with myself, and then there was a moment of self-realization that at least with piracy, the people of this country are getting to see what they deserve any which way, because we haven't provided it to them. Sorry to use this reverse logic, but the point I'm trying to say is we need to build theaters and cultural centers for the people of this country, where I can take my mother, my sister, my wife, or they can take me, sorry, and at a reasonable cost, in a healthy and a clean environment, which FICCI was at the helm of the multiplex revolution. FICCI was at the helm of so many other things, and I'm extremely confident that FICCI will be at the helm of this new age of cinema exhibition in India, which, if I may term, will be the people's theaters, set all across the country, and the numbers, and we're gonna beat China, not to worry. A lot of us quote China all the time. So that's not an issue. It's great to have good and healthy competition. At least there are milestones. So we're gonna do that. So yes, and I hope all of us in this room actually believe that we're gonna do that. And unless you believe, we're not gonna do it. So yeah, so we need to take the country along and not just 0.3 or 3% of the 100 billion we keep talking about. I have to thank our committee chairman, Mr. Uday Shankar, not for just supporting us, but for leading us from the front, for showing us the way, for his terrific ideas and bold thinking. He has not only been an architect of one of the most successful media M&E organizations of this country, but what he's also done for all of us is that he's been a thought leader. So, sir, please keep leading us. It's very important. Thank you, Mr. John Howard Torrey. Thank you once again. Thank you, Mr. Patel. And sir, now that you're here from Delhi and we brought you down with great persuasion, and since I believe finally we managed to convince you yesterday, we won't let you off so easily. Let me promise you that. And what I may suggest very humbly is if we can, within the whole thing, create like an action committee of 3-4 people who meet every fortnight, because it's a long road. It cannot be just, we cannot fix meetings and then have meetings to have meetings. We have to define agendas. We have to approach it in a structured manner. And then maybe every quarter we review what had happened every fortnight, and we can provide representation from each stakeholder from our industry. And under your guidance and your leadership, we really look forward to, I won't call them issues. Somebody told me, so what are the issues in front of you? I said, we have no issues whatsoever. We have opportunities. I look at abolishing censorship as an opportunity. I don't look at it as an issue. We have to do it, and this generation will have to. So let's give it the next 3 years, and fortnight after fortnight, and let's see where we get. So on that note, once again, I'd like to thank everybody, people who come from far away land, parts of this country. Leena ma'am, you're the pillar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That takes us to the close of the inaugural. Sorry for being delayed on the rest of the sessions, but we'll start right away. Lena, would you like to start the next session?
Today, after making the content, after doing everything, you don't know because two movies, similar in nature, one gets through and one doesn't get through. And I think what Sai is saying is perfect.
Kapil, if I can bring you in here to pick up on a point that Siddharth had mentioned earlier about the real screen paucity in India for films. So it's one, we know the numbers, that we know we really have low screens per million. How do you expand this? I mean, how do you solve this issue?
I think before that, I'll very, very briefly touch upon how do you monetize the filmed content. So the first window of monetization of the filmed content is the theaters, is the screens. Then only it goes to the satellite channel or the other mediums. So when we go back 10 years, 12 years, all screens were analog and the release of films was restricted by the number of prints which any producer or the distributor could make, which was a very heavy investment. And so the first phase to exploit that, the digitization started. And I'm not giving any idea to the government of India, but fortunately digitization was not regulated. So the private industry came in, they invested heavily in the digitization, and by 2000, from 2005 to 2013, the 100% of the country was digitized. In terms of the theatrical entertainment. Through that digitization, the same 9,000 screens in 2005 and 2016, by 2008 the 100 crore rupee club was created, then by 2009 200 crore club came, and by 2016 300 crore, and the last movie did almost 400 crores, 387 crores, Dangal. It was because of the digitization. But this is only from those 9,000 screens. As Siddharth mentioned, we have 7 or 8 screens per million of population. China has 30. China has added 23,000 screens in last 3 years, 23,000 screens. Last year they added 9,000 screens. Equivalent to India, they added the screens. So the moot point here is that, as a country, we need at least 20,000 more screens. Now, capital is available, willingness is there, facilitation can be done. It is restricted only and only because of the regulation. Because there are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 approvals required. There have been instances where the multiplex is invested heavily in a multiplex. It took 2 years to get the approval, 3 years to get the approvals. It was very politically driven or locally driven. So all the investment, it was going waste and there was a fear. So the growth of the screens is not happening. Today the screens are growing only at the rate of 2% per annum. We are adding 150 to 200 screens, that also in the multiplex sector. So the issue is that the moment we move from regulation to facilitation, immediately the growth will start. And growth is not going to come just from multiplexes. The growth has to happen all over the country. There are entrepreneurs all over the country who are willing to invest, who have land available, who have money available. Because the multiplex sector is very expensive. You have to bring cheap entertainment to the people all over India. So we need to add 20,000 more screens, and that is possible only if there is facilitation. So nobody is looking for any subsidy from the government, but the moment we move from regulation to the facilitation, that growth, if China can add 23,000 screens, I'm sure we can add 20,000 screens in the next 5 years. Why not? So that is the main issue, and that is to fill that gap, which is, in the villages, in the small villages. Now there are initiatives which are taken by various people by taking the cinema on wheels and showing it free of cost to the people. So, so there are 1,500 cities and towns where these screens exist. There are some villages which are getting covered, but the huge gap, the 20,000 more screens, and I think that is what is the need of the hour.
I was really struck by the statistics that really struck me to me in the film industry this year is that Dangal was seen by less than 4% of India's population on screens. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. On that note, the Secretary of the INB Ministry, Mr. Ajay Mittal, is here. Sir, if I can please request you to come on stage and join this discussion. couldn't let you get away without answering a couple of questions. So Bharat, I'll come to you after I ask him a couple of questions on this. In your absence, one of the issues that we discussed was, and two things I wanted to put to you, sir. One is the question that Anuradha was discussing about when are we going to see the prospect of private news on radio channels and not just AIR news. And the second is, and this is a question to you as a parent ministry for this industry, this tussle with, there is a sense that with regulators seem to be affecting copyright principles in other ways, and there are court cases going on about that. What is your position as a parent ministry on that? If these two questions, if you could answer, sir.
Okay. First thing first, on the news thing, it's not that the news is not permitted as of now. News is permitted on all private radio and community radio. The only thing is, as of now, the news is to be sourced from the All India Radio. So that's one. Now the demand perhaps is that we should be tried to source our own news, and we should be allowed to edit the news before we broadcast. We are considering this. In fact, on this subject, there's a case already pending before the Supreme Court of India, and where the ministry is a party, and we are trying to deal with that case. So as of now, the local enforcement authorities on all complaints related to IPR issues.
So one more question on the issues around censorship, in particular on the threats of violence to filmmakers, recent incidents of sets being set on fire, and so on and so forth. You responded to that question in the morning, so when it was raised in the opening session, you responded to that by alluding to the law of the land, saying that there are self-appointed guardians of morality, but there is the law of the land, and you
instantaneously by saying something. I mean, this is not just theory. The last political campaign, the major role of the news media was to amplify news from one individual. So everyone is a content company. I think that's the first thing. That leads into a second observation, which is platforms which take advantage of connectedness across consumers typically enjoy these winner-take-all dynamics or exponential growth rates, which will always outpace traditional growth in content industries. And the third is this blurring of industry boundaries, which I think many people have referred to, where what we call content and distribution and platforms or hardware and software, I mean, it's essentially now one game. We're basically all playing in the same space. I mean, what struck me over the last 10 days, I was just reading news feeds, is the extent to which Twitter, Apple.
Mittal Saab, I hope it's not unfair to you and to your colleagues in all the government departments. It's just a comment which FICCI and all of us sitting here should address. Fringe elements is always spoken about. They will continue. Jallikattu was the largest fringe element in Tamil Nadu. 70% of the people who went for the protest have never seen a Jallikattu in their life in Tamil Nadu. So now Maharashtra is reworking the bullock cart. Now you'll ask me, what's the relevance to my question? If this happens in the media and the entertainment field, I think we are asking for a larger political resolution to what can happen in the next 5 to 10 years. That's just my thing. I want to leave my thoughts with you, because majoritarianism of the Jallikattu got the central government to respond within a couple of days.
Right. We just have time for one more question. Yes, over there.
Yeah,
short questions, so we have to wrap up. We are running behind time.
Question. Okay, Siddharth, I would like to know, because you mentioned about creative people have started self-censoring themselves. Now tell me, you are part of Disney, and what happens when Disney, is working on a film project? Are you not, Disney also doesn't go through a process of self-censoring in order to ensure that it gets certain kind of rating, from the rating agencies? Is it not the fact that you also modify your content in order to get it passed from certain
Question
rating
is about
agencies, whether in
self-censorship,
UK or in US? This is a question.
Got it. Yeah, so I got the question. I'm actually not at Disney anymore, so I've turned independent producer, but I will answer your question. You are absolutely right when you say that a company like Disney would do a certain amount of self-censorship because the Disney brand stands for certain values that they would like to depict in their movies. Versus another studio which is sort of content agnostic, which doesn't only make family-friendly movies, but would make movies that maybe cater to a youth audience where they want to be slightly edgier, etc. I'm very heartened that the Secretary actually has clarified that we as an industry should not be looking at self-censorship, and that's something we would not like to be doing. But I think we're all responding to the current environment that exists, where unfortunately there are certain fringe elements, and as the Secretary rightly put it, you're not going to be able to apprehend in advance what they might or might not do and how their reaction might be. What I think as an industry we are looking for is when these events do occur, a very strong statement from the central as well as the state government wherever this has occurred, very strongly condemning this act, because if someone is, for example, slapped on the set of his film or a set is destroyed, what I think we would like is the signals to be sent out that this is completely unacceptable, though obviously we know it is, but it bears repeating, because if that doesn't happen in a very, in a very timely manner, then you run the risk of emboldening these fringe elements by them believing that the content is being tacitly condoned. So I think it is very important for a very strong statement to go out from whoever the authority is at that point of time, that this will not be accepted and strict action will be taken.
Right, thank you very much. On that note, sir, we have to wrap it up. We are really behind time. We can catch them after the... No, we'll have to close. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a big hand. No, sorry, we have to close. Sorry. Thank you.
इधर नजदीक में सर सर 1 second thank you boss how's it okay sir boss
picture at the Oscars with 2 candidates.
Mr. Ajit Andhare, COO Viacom 18 Motion Pictures, Ms. Monica Tata, COO BTVI, and our moderator, Mr.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are many of us on stage. It's my privilege to be the moderator of this session, which means that I get to ask questions. I see many old friends here. We still have Vani Tripathi missing. I wish you were Vani. So, as I was saying that I'm privileged to be the moderator of this session, and personally I hate those moderators who speak themselves a lot and never give a chance to actually get to hear the panelists. It's my game today to try not to be one of them. Let's see if I succeed. And many prolific people here, and I'm going to start the conversation very randomly. We'll try to make sense. A small introduction about myself, for those who might know a little bit about me. I'll give you the reason why I'm entitled to be over here. It is that the first thing I ever directed on television was a show called Purukshetra, which was a chat show about women. Yes, ma'am, you were there. It was a chat show about men called Purukshetra with a female moderator. So history repeats itself in a different way, like Kabir Das ki ulti Vani. And I am here. Your female anchor is a member of parliament. My female anchor is a member of parliament. And if it had not been for Ajit Andhare over here, I would have been the only privileged male gentleman here. So, just working in Kurukshetra, as it happens, provided me a lot of insight and experience about women in this country, how things were changing, how interesting things were. And we, in this short discussion, are not going to perhaps come up with anything prolific, but we will mess around till you guys get a glimpse of the lives that we live, that each one of us lives, and in an experiential way, we leave something with you which is of interest. So I'm going to start with Ajit here. Are you getting this mic? Hello, hello. Hello. I'm going to start with you, Ajit. Would you like to say what you do?
So I guess, first of all, again, I feel privileged to be here on this panel. I mean,
Is the mic working? So sorry, Ajit.
Yeah, the mic is working, I think.
All right.
Yeah. So save the moderator, I am the only one of the male species here. What do? Is I make films at Viacom 18 Motion Pictures. I think what we are talking about is breaking the glass ceiling and the misogyny and all of that. And happy to say that I think for us as a studio, the journey has been one where we possibly discovered this truth, very early, and a whole lot of films that we did. The heroism, did not come from the hero, which is what has happened for almost 50, 60 years in the industry. But the heroism actually came from the woman, and so we realized that, stories can source heroism.
No, Ajit, let me try to add some personal touch and some controversy into the thing.
Oh my God.
Do you like women?
Of course I do.
Yeah? You feel happy? Would you like me to take a snap and send to you?
Absolutely.
But when you work with them, do you feel that in the kind of setup that you work in a media corporate kind of a setup, all white collar, but do you feel any difference in the two? Would you be careful of, or would you be thinking differently in hiring a woman, etc., over a man, etc.?
See, again, this would be very conditioned from the background that I come from, and I've largely experienced two sectors when you talk corporate, one being FMCG and the other being media. Certainly in the corporate, I would say that's a thought which has possibly never crossed my mind, or the professional setup that I've been part of. Yes, of course, because of the society that we come from and the natural skew of the society, especially in the FMCG, the ratio of women was of course much lower as compared to media and entertainment. In fact, I would say if there is one industry which embraces women wholeheartedly in the corporate sector, it is actually M&E,
That's why we are in the industry which embraces women, right?
Absolutely. So I would say certainly not at all. I think one aspect where I do experience that is, let's say we are trying to sell a film with a female lead versus we are trying to sell a film with a male lead to a distributor. Now the distributor represents, let's say, a heartland person somewhere sitting in UP. I think the difficulty that I will face to sell a female lead film, despite having a roster of success on female-led films, is going to be significantly high. I don't think I can sell a film even today. But if I have a male lead film to sell, I can sell it sitting in Bombay pretty easily. So I think that's the other end where we've really seen the contrast very, very starkly. And even if you've seen so much of success, whether it's, Neerja, Tanu Weds Manu, or, even Dangal, I think that whole bias is far too deep-rooted, for it to change easily, which is really the old narrative. But I think new narrative is that it is changing. People are realizing that there is an economics that works even with the women lead, and that bias is clearly sort of chipping away. But it's just starting to chip away. It's a really long way to go.
I'd like to welcome Geraldine into the conversation now. Since we were talking about things changing, we get the impression, being in this era, that things with women are changing a lot in the country. You are a historian, and you've written a lot about women in India. Do you think that we are gravitating towards greater rate of change as far as women, just the dignity of women is concerned?
Thank you. For historians, these are always difficult questions. women are, is it good or it's too close? All right, thank you. I think there's definitely huge change, significant change. And one of the most significant ones is women in education. So I study a lot of colonial history, so the beginning of education for women, and do work on women who, I was just looking at one who was born in 1866, who was forbidden to study and remembered how much she wanted to study. And the boys in the family had a tutor who came to the school. She sat on the outside and was forbidden to even have a book or a pen to write. And so she learned everything by rote and was told by her grandmothers and her mothers that women don't learn. If they do, their husbands will die. So education is one of the most significant changes, and women going into every field. The other change, of course, is women in work roles, women working outside the home. But the numbers in India are strange because they are so much lower than other countries, and the number of women in the workforce are decreasing. I think what I do see is that doesn't seem to change as much as I would like is a focus on women's essentialized roles. And we were talking a little bit about this before we even came out here, that the ideal, the good woman, is a wife and a mother and a wonderful sister and a caring daughter and all these things. And in that equation, it's very hard to figure out how a woman is also very good at her career, works very hard, long hours. How do you combine the two? And I think the women I deal with, young students in India, feel just overburdened by this role model that they're expected to live up to.
Let's talk to a woman like that, pardon me introducing you with this, Monica, but you have, I'm sure, experience about this in your life, in the work that you do. Can you share some insight on this?
Yeah, sure. You know, being a minority representation in this panel as a non-film person in this, I like to give a perspective from a corporate, from the media and entertainment industry, from a corporate point of view. And being the topic of discussion of breaking the glass ceiling, I think I'm an example of have broken that glass ceiling. Having said that, and I tend to disagree with Ajit in a way that media and entertainment industry is a good representation of embracing women. I think it's in a way correct when you look at a certain mid-level representation that happens. So you can find a lot of women in the corporate, in the media and entertainment space, especially whether it's television, broadcasting, advertising and marketing. But very few, or probably none at all, at the heads of those businesses. So whether it's managing the businesses or being on boards, there's a very limited representation of women in this industry. So I don't believe that we have done enough. In fact, on the contrary to media and entertainment, the financial industry, the banking industry is a fabulous representation of equal, getting women to be leading those businesses. Almost 50% of the top ranks in this country are women, which is not the statistics, unfortunately, in the media and entertainment space. But that's taking the optimism part of it, or seeing the glass half full and seeing that we have tried to break that ceiling in some way. You're absolutely right. There is a sense of, so you basically need to learn how to tap dance, which is what I did. So you have to there are certain compromises you do, and I don't call them as compromises, I call them the choices I made. The choices I made as a mother, as a wife, or as a daughter, as a daughter-in-law, as a business executive, those are the choices I took in my career, and I have no regrets about it.
Do you think it would have been easier for a man in your place, generally? I mean,
in many situations, yes, no denying that. And having been a woman in certain situations, I know I paid the price for it. Especially when I was having my children, especially I think I know that I lost my career sort of growth opportunities because it was presumed that having delivered a baby, you're going to have a tough time to manage career and work.
career and home. So it was a presumption which was taken, and I did pay the price for it. But like I said, I don't have regrets because those are the choices I make. There are times you have to make those choices, whether you want to, sometimes I said, okay, it's really important for me to be at my daughter's parent-teachers meeting because that's more important to me than a very important interview or a business meeting. So I took that choice. But there are many times I had to not be there for an annual day function of my daughter because I had to be at a very integral business decision making. So those are the choices one has to make. Well, I don't know whether has to or not, but I did, and I have no regrets about that.
Vani, bringing you in, since this is a very general part of the conversation about which is easier, being a man in this world and achieving success, or being a woman and doing the same, and the extra price that a woman has to pay. And you have experience in politics, so you have, I'm thinking, addressed and been with the largest number of people perhaps as far as this question is concerned, and I've also been in media, and I've seen you from college. So in your experience, what do you think? Just a very general question.
India's to begin with, the subject of the day being misogyny and glass ceiling, actually they are at cross purposes with each other in the country. And we have to remember that misogyny itself, personally speaking and even socially speaking, is very deep-rooted prejudice which actually continues from very, very long periods, probably if you go back to the history and the traditional way of, whatever women insignified, in the country. Misogyny today, the way we look at it, absolutely represents that.
So in this conversation, we refer to misogyny as not really the hatred towards women, but a bias against women,
Absolutely.
right? That the society
Absolutely.
might have.
So
which
when
might
you
not
look
be the
at,
dictionary explanation
yeah,
anyway.
So when you look at the social fabric of the country and when you look at the diversity of the country, what tends to happen is that we need to, when we look at women and we talk about, prejudices against them, we broad stroke them in so many ways. We generalize them, we make it into a kind of a monolith. It is not a monolith at all. The kind of diversity this country has, and with very much the matriarchal societies which are also celebrated in the country, we more often than not forget to speak about them too.
Sure.
They were also a part of the discourse when the nation was evolving, and this kind of social fabric that we see today was very much a part of it. But having said that, by far, whether it is politics or whether it is media, of course, women, to be represented fairly is a very tough call. But we've also made a mistake as women sometimes, Imtiaz. We've kept the men out and the discourse is incomplete without them. I also feel that it has to be a collaborative approach and a shared responsibility because policy making lies with the men. We, as we speak about representation in Indian Parliament, we are at 11.5%, which in an Asian context looks like a very big broad stroke, but it isn't. So I think the way forward, or the way women are today, this glass ceiling is also about creating a collaborative approach, with the other gender. And until that intermix will not happen, till that discourse will not happen, the narrative will remain incomplete. And I know a lot of my women right friends, who talk about women liberation get upset with me when I say that. But the practicality, or the way you look at it logically, has to be that it has to be a shared collaboration, and if they are not understanding, you will have to make them understand.
There is a very interesting thing now, since we are talking about politics. As a kid, I used to wonder why in the United States of America and many progressive countries where women's rights are much more respected than in some others, we have not really had a prime minister or a president, the premier, as a woman, where in countries like Bangladesh and in India, which are supposed to be very backward as far as women's rights are concerned, we've had them. What would you say to that? What could be the reason?
Very simply, the answer is always say that these were dynasties which were ruling the countries. It was Sri Lanka, it was also Benazir Bhutto Pakistan, Shrima Bandar Naike, and of course Indira Gandhi herself. But having said that, I think, Imtiaz, we have very consciously worked at women representation. Sometimes these have been very silent movements. For example, the reservation that women got in the local self-governing bodies of the country in 1990s was a very big change.
Are you pro that?
Absolutely I am. Because remember, as in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh and Pakistan, where women are nominated on posts of representation, in India they have to electorally fight them. And remember, gender no more remains an issue when it's a woman pitted against another woman. And the moment the gender is out, the issues become more complicated and more diverse. So they have been silent. And remember, reservation, the bill which is also there in the parliament, which is not getting passed because of course, the patriarchy, and we are addicted to patriarchy in this country. But having said that, it's a socially leveraging position. And we have to remember this social leverage is very important for us as far as representation of women is concerned in the country.
So talking about personal leverage with you, Sona, we were just discussing that she performs in front of thousands and thousands of people. She is a prolific singer and a performing artist. So when you tour in the heartland, as we were talking, in the north, as a woman performer, do you do anything special to control your security situation?
Before I answer that, I must say this is the first time that I have been on a panel which not surprisingly is again a women's topic and women-centric, and so I get invited for it. And I have a grouse every time Times Now calls me. I say, you know, I have a brain that can opine on things beyond matters women, so I would like to be invited for those ones too. I must say this is the first time that I'm sitting on a panel where there are two men on stage, otherwise I have to literally think that it's a bunch of women talking about women, and the audience is also mostly women. So thank you to the organizers and the audience.
Case, right?
Because it always feels like we are here to discuss our period pains or something, and it's all between us, and the rest of the world doesn't have to engage because we are only 50% of the population. But just like the universal stories in film, in the big parda, is all about everybody being interested about man's journey and narrative. And when it comes to the women, only the women are interested. I feel, well, we should give a big clap to all of us for filling up this bubble with all of us, you know. Yeah, and to answer your question, I'm a performing artist, and I've traveled with a band. And for the larger part of this decade, I started where just to pitch the idea of a female performer with a band was a tough one for a lot of people to digest. Because thanks to the Pakistani bands, or maybe that's not the word angle to bring up here, people had an idea of how, well, men can be with musicians on stage, women have to be with dancers for some reason, and in some way titillate the audience. I mean, that's that's likely to be a purpose. So you're either in that zone, or you're in that Savitri, Saraswati, frump, singing very seriously and appealing to that, you know, that domesticated woman who is either that wife or, you know, or that good girl, a good woman. Things have changed though. I mean, I've seen it change in the last 7-8 years itself. And in the last 3-4 years, I find myself touring extensively with a band. And North India is especially very challenging and a very exciting space to be in. Because, what was the question you asked me though? Do I do anything?
Doesn't matter, you're doing well.
Do I? Yeah.
Security.
Yeah, in terms of security, I must say, I must say that I have a manager in the audience here who would vouch for the fact that we have an incredible detailed hospitality rider, which we learned to put together over the years, where we attempt to create a distance between what I am and what the rest of the people are who meet me in that show, because it has to be that quality for car, this amount. There is a certain belief that, okay, this female performer, you know, breathes in some rarefied air, and therefore she shouldn't be
perhaps
touched.
People might think that that you're snooty.
Sorry?
Because you have specifications about how you'd like to be treated on the tour.
Yes, to this extent, every time I check into a hotel in North India, I must share this with you, is that आप अभी भी करो, दिल्ली में भी हो, Delhi is your capital, you call up for room service and they will answer you with a sir ji. And I will keep saying, आवाज़ इतनी भी भारी नहीं है, I'm a woman, and you know, I would try and explain that. And it's incredible that even a waiter coming in to serve you, and I'm not talking about Kanpur or some, you know, smaller place, I'm talking about even Delhi, where their natural instinct is that if it's a position of respect, if it's a person living probably alone in a hotel room or seems to have a team or some kind of a boss, some kind of an authority figure, it has to be surgy. The vocabulary itself is not tuned in to understand your gender.
That's true.
So there's so many little interesting things which add up to show us that yes, things are changing, but I mean, we have a lot of people to go. The one thing I'd like to state up front is that it's not about being the pretty faces anymore or being just visible. I think it's very, very important that women occupy positions of leadership and decision making, and for that, when it comes to the media and entertainment, they actually take charge of creating content and not just being part of content, not being the puppet in the whole game. So that to me is the most critical thing straight on.